and welcome to the Diablo 3 class panel. I'd like to introduce our panelists, Jay Wilson, Julie Love, and Wyatt Chang.
I'm going to take a quick picture if you don't mind. Let's see. Can all you over here do? All right, smile. So my name's Jay Wilson. I'm the game director for Diablo 3. With me today is Julie Love, who is our lead technical artist. Does a lot of the effects that for all the classes, and monster deaths, cool stuff like that. And Wyatt Ching, who is a technical game designer and does a lot of our tuning and class design. And you can go ahead and advance. We're going to talk today a little bit about how we design our classes. We're going to talk specifically about the wizard and how we came up with the concepts for the character and what our goals were for that character. We're going to talk about where the current state of the skill system is. And then we're also going to do an overview of kind of how art and design work together to create our characters. So to start, we'll have Wyatt Ching, and he's going to talk about the wizard.
So who is the wizard, and why did we decide to choose the wizard as the next class? We knew that players really want a blaster class. You know, we know that some of you are going to sit down at your character selection screen and go, who is the nuker? I want to play the glass cannon. You know, that's an archetype that people are familiar with. It's one that we've seen in Diablo and other Blizzard games. So we really view the wizard as an iteration of the sorceress. The focus, though, and the trick is to figure out how can we fulfill the fantasy of, you know, the glass cannon, the nuker, but do it in a fresh way. You know, that's going to be a theme over the next few slides. How do we combine this old and new? How do we have the familiar and yet the innovative? And how do we combine those together? And the way we chose to do that is to draw upon some inspiration from, you know, old school pen and paper RPGs. And we really went the direction of high magic. And so the question, well, what does that mean, right? High magic is sort of like manipulating the laws of the universe. It means that you're dealing a lot with time manipulation or physics. It's kind of as opposed to summoning, you know, she doesn't do life magic, druidic magic, alchemy, evil and good magic. Those would all be outside the realm of what the wizard does, which is really all about, you know, the channeling the power of the universe. We'll talk a little bit more about the wizard's personality, you know, who is she? And what we decided is she's super ambitious and smart and powerful. She was smarter than her teachers in wizard school, you know. We're talking about the kind of person who threw off the curve, you know. She didn't study for conjuring class, but she still aced the test. We're talking about the kind of person who, you know, if she lived today, she probably would have dropped out of college to start a .com. This is the kind of person that we're talking about. Somebody who thinks that her teachers are holding her back by saying, well, you're not allowed to study this school, that's forbidden. And she's like, well, that's what I want to learn. And maybe one day that'll get her in trouble. We'll see. So I've got 4 skills to show to you guys today. The first of which is Magic Missile. And having the archetype of the blaster, we knew, you know, everybody expects there to be a skill where I click somewhere on the screen, a projectile comes out, and it does damage. And the obvious first candidate probably would have been something like a fireball or a fireball. And we decided not to go that way because we really wanted to set the tone of the kit to be this high magic character. And if we started with a fireball or a firebolt, that would have set her up to be more of an elementalist. And that has some implications later on, because as we started to develop the class, and we said, well, what happens to these skills as I get better gear or level up, put more points into my skills? What does it start to look like at level 10, at level 30, at level 50, at level 90? And we knew when we started to brainstorm that, well, if we had started with Fireball, you probably would have said, well, you know, a Fireball does burning damage with time. or a fireball explodes and does AoE damage to a whole area. But if you deal with a skill like Magic Missile, you're probably looking at things like, well, when I cast this, multiple missiles come out. Or when I cast this, they start homing in on their targets. And so the behavior of a Magic Missile is going to be very different, and that was a very interesting side effect of setting that tone, setting that aesthetic direction. Next skill is Electrocute. This is a bit reminiscent of Chain Lightning from Diablo 2. There are a couple skills that are coming back as part of her weather kit. Weather control and weather manipulation is one of the areas that the wizard will specialize in. I know that there's some old favorites from Diablo 2, like Blizzard and Chain Lightning and Charge Bolt. A lot of those are going to be coming back. Chain Lightning in the form of Electrocute. And Electrocute, really, we wanted to find a way to do Chain Lightning, but to kick it up a notch. You know, to take it in our direction, to turn the awesome dial way up. You know, awesome meter to 11. After doing those first two skills, we wanted to do Slow Time. And this was part of the desire to do something new, you know, something to surprise the player, something to excite people. And we also really wanted to push ourselves as a development team, and we wanted to push on the programming, art, and design fronts. The skill was actually originally concepted as a game-wide stop time, and as we started to think about that, we're like, you know, that might not be so good in multiplayer. So we redesigned it as a slow time bubble, as you see up on the screen. And the bubble actually is multiplayer friendly and actually had a lot more multiplayer and gameplay effects that were actually very interesting. So that skill turned out really well. And the fourth skill I have for you today is Disintegrate. We talked about Magic Missile and Electrocute being nuker spells. You know, Disintegrate is the real face melter. This is a skill that when you first see it, nothing like Disintegrate has been in a Diablo game before, but when you sit down and play it, it's undeniably Diablo. It feels great to just sit there and hold down the mouse and melt your opponents. There's a bit of an interesting story about the development of Disintegrate. We were doing some experiments in the Barbarian pretty early on in the development process, and we had a skill called Giant Swing. And this came from a desire from a lot of the people on the team to have a skill where we're like, oh, well, what if we had a skill with a Barbarian, when you held down the mouse button, he started like winding up his swing, and he built up in power the longer you held down your mouse button. When you let go of the mouse, he let this huge swing go, and the longer you held, the more powerful and more damage, and just obliterate everybody in front of you. And we said, that sounds awesome. So we tried it out. And unfortunately, it turns out it wasn't that fun. It wasn't that fun because, well, first of all, people had trouble not clicking in Diablo. And they're like, I'm holding on the mouse, I'm not clicking, what's going on? We had another problem because it was really frustrating if you're sitting there pulling down the charge for Giant Swing, and then a ranged monster comes up to you and starts shooting you. And you're like, well come closer, because I've got this giant swing and I want to let it go. And you'd let go and it would just whiff. And you're like, oh my goodness, that's so frustrating. And then in multiplayer, it didn't work either. Because you'd sit there and you'd have a monster coming up to you and you'd charge up your giant swing, and then all your teammates would kill the monster and run off without you, and you're stuck here, you know, charging up your awesome swing. So it didn't work. But we sat there and thought about it, and we said, you know what we could do is we could stick that skill on the wizard, but make it a ranged skill. And that's where Disintegrate came from. When it's a ranged skill, I don't have to worry about ranged monsters. I don't have to worry about my teammates getting ahead of me. I can just hold down the mouse, and instead of unleashing a huge power when I release, we made it start with a low power, and the longer it's on a target, it heats that target up and increases in damage over time. And that's how